And hello. This is Dan Lutz, and welcome to another episode of Frontlines. Got the camera turned on here, and I hope everyone's doing well for today. It's a beautiful day here in the morning. It's about 9 a.m. here in the Philippines, and we've had we had a kind of a diversion of what I was going to cover yesterday, so we're going to go back to today, which is Facebook and Mark Greenberg. And where the Zucker came from, I don't know, or how that came about. Maybe it's just more of a unique name to work with, kind of more. First time I've heard it, right, is with regarding to Facebook. So everything pretty much planned out in regards with how that came down, how they built Facebook, how it is actually funded by DARPA, how these things all came about. So what we're going to look at is there was 4 people that made up a group. It was the Fellowship, kind of after the Lord of the Rings Fellowship, and basically they were all there in the dorm together with Mark, and this was more about what happened at that time, what was really going on. And American Intelligence Media is one of the YouTube channels I follow, right? And they have also their own website. Why don't we go ahead and I literally just pulled that up so we can really take a look, because we're going to cover an article that they put out called Facebook insider confesses all. And so that's what we're going to review here today. I'm going to just first share the website. So this is aimfortruth.org. So it's AIMF. So then the number 4, then truth, TRUTH.org. That's their website. And they're calling the Zuckerberg dossier. Mark is a fraud. Mark is a fraud used by the CIA. That's basically how this goes. This is the article. Now, this is the lead up. This actually talks about how they received this letter, everything that goes into it. And so they were quite skeptical when they first got the letter, but they ended up getting collaboration. And so now they've actually put it out as a full this full letter so that people will understand what's gone on behind the scenes. So that's what we're going to review. Again, this website is here if you want to actually get some of this background detail before we get to the actual letter and about what happened. So, and it starts here. To every Facebook user. So let me first, I'm going to stop that here, and we're going to switch over, and we're going to now go to Becky, and Becky is going to read it. So she is actually part of American Intelligence Media. There's actually, two main. It's Douglas and Becky.
To every Facebook user, Mark Zuckerberg and all of us who were there from the beginning are lying to you and using your personal life as a government-controlled experiment in brainwashing and mind control. Basically, a weaponized system of the military that got out of control. At this point, Mark Zuckerberg has lost control of a company that he never really owned or operated. Truly, anyone who has ever worked with Mark knows that his mind is a blank and that he is nothing more than a parrot for the government handlers who created him. Mark is incapable of running a McDonald's, let alone one of the most powerful companies in the world. Not even his name is real, and his identity has always been covered up. Mark was chosen as a child for a CIA training program because his relatives were some of the people creating the program.
I stopped there just to make a comment. Right off the back, they're talking about Mark and his capabilities. And let me talk to you directly here for a moment. I had a very good friend who was in the Wall Street crowd, owned his own capital firm, and was involved with many large capital raises for companies. He actually met with Mark, and as he said to me, it was really unimpressed and really didn't think that there was anything there. Later he was kicking himself when he saw what happened to Facebook, right? But his initial impressions of him was that there wasn't, that this guy was not very smart. So it was just I just thought I'd bring that up because for me that's corroborates with me exactly what I felt along the way. It's like this guy's same actually with Bill Gates. Not to say that Bill Gates really did do coding. I wasn't suggesting that, but he's really not the creative mind that actually creates it. He is a corporate raider. But this happens a lot out of when we're fighting against the cabal. We're looking at the people that are literally they're trained to be into a position, right? But they have to fit that mold, and they have to be put into place. And they're not the creative individuals that create everything. They ended up using money to basically get position and use other people's inventions, just like Facebook. All right, we'll continue here. Oh, wrong one. I should probably change screen so it doesn't happen again.
making excuses for Mark, but his choices have not been his own. Yes, he has become an evil sociopath who once believed in his heart of hearts that if he decided he wanted to be president, all he had to do was say he wanted the job and Facebook would deliver the election to him. That is the level of brainwashing Mark is at. He's not in contact with reality. You might think that a madman who could think he could become president because he said so would be discovered and accused as a fraud. Well, that has happened repeatedly with the other 3 teams that were working at Harvard under Harvard President Larry Summers to create what DARPA and In-Q-Tel wanted the most, a cyber weapon that could control the minds of anyone that could be lured into it. Facebook was always a military weapon, just like Eric Schmidt's Google, which was incubated in the same fashion that Facebook was. Mark was a patsy, but a ruthless, heartless, cold-blooded, non-human patsy. He became this way through the brainwashing he received in his high school years by a DARPA program called TIA that needed a boy genius to be the front man. This scam would make Mark into a global model of the young, cool, irreverent computer geniuses that rule the world and lead everyone to a cyber god of artificial intelligence. Mark was just an unwitting puppet at first. I felt sorry for him. I remember when I first became roommates with Mark in our sophomore year at Harvard. We were in Kirkland House on JFK Street and had to endure Dustin and Andrew. Mark hated them because they prevented us from sleeping together, even though we were in the same room. It was frustrating and kept our relationship secret. Little did I know that the thing that drew me to Mark, a certain openness for listening to anyone, also made him extremely promiscuous with other sexes. Mark had no morals, conscience or shame. He also chased women on Craigslist and would sometimes just disappear to rendezvous with them. He was like a blank slate that simply echoes whatever was happening in his environment. I loved and hated this aspect of his personality, but later found out that he and his brother and cousin were all the same way due to the brainwashing programs they were subjected to during high school. If certain people spoke to Mark in person or on the phone, he would drop everything and do whatever they told him to do. Certain people had more power and effect over him. I eventually found out from Mark breaking down and crying that the brainwashing was permanent and was all part of the position these people had promised to create for Mark. They didn't even know what the position was or entailed. But one thing Mark was sure of, he was only placed at Harvard for a while until his position became available to him. Mark was certain that this promise of a position included a great deal of money and power, aphrodisiacs to an incurable narcissist. I must admit that I came under the power of Mark's surety that he didn't need Harvard degree or good grades. Mark eventually dropped out of Harvard at the end of our sophomore year and became filthy rich and more powerful than he could have imagined. I also admit that I rode on Mark's success to become quite wealthy myself. All 4 of the members of the club Mark eventually named the Fellowship became wealthy by no means of our own. We simply knew Mark's secrets. You see, Mark could never be faithful to anyone, but he loved men more than women. He actually used to hate all women. Mark cheated and wanted to bring the new boy home to me to join in. I was never into it like Mark was. He was abusive but would never admit it, especially to young boys. Eventually, there were 3 of us that remained lovers with Mark. Mark always had panic attacks and would break down frequently due to the brainwashing. He would cry about his mother and the torture she let them do to him. At those times, Mark's mouth ran on open, and he would tell his bed partners about all the pain and horrible plans these evil people did to him. Early on, his doubts and fears almost consumed him at night, and he could hardly sleep due to nightmares. Once Mark became filthy rich, he simply used drugs to mask these fears. But if you get him upset by asking about the creation of Facebook, Mark will freak out and have a panic attack because he always messes up the story and looks like an idiot.
So again, when we see the MK Ultra mind control and the ritual abuse that's done, it comes from the parents, right? From his mother, she says. Now, was it really his biological mother, or was he placed with the family, as often as happens, so that they actually have no problem, abusing someone who's not their biological son? So this is this pattern of breaking down what makes humans human. All right, we'll continue.
He can't stand questions about how he made Facebook because he didn't. I had to laugh as one of his stupid answers. I saw that Harvard didn't have Facebook, so I made one, or something close to that. The journalists let him get away with that lie, like they always have. Mark Zuckerberg, did not write one single line of programming source code for Facebook. These are lies and propaganda generated by his government military handlers. Everyone knows that the Winklevoss twins, Aaron and Cameron, won a $65 million lawsuit settlement against Mark because they knew that their little Harvard Connection HC piece was just adjunct code attached to the original stolen source code, which was given to Mark by Professor James Chandler and IBM. That 65 million bit of dirt knowledge was pretty profitable for a couple of cute Harvard crew rower jocks with no interest in me. Mark simply had others adjust the code into what was government-sponsored military weaponization of a cyber warfare project directed by the president of Harvard, Larry Summers. Even Summers himself had his own budding student and staff directory being developed by the Harvard computer staff called Facebook. Mark didn't even create the name. The Winklevoss twins had developed their own version in the competition for the government contract, HC, that they had changed to Connect You. Aaron Greenspan was developing House System, and Paul Siglia was working with Mark to modify his Street Facts software into a Facebook too. Mark developed nothing, absolutely nothing. Even the famous hacking of the Harvard systems was not done by Mark himself. Mark was the middleman for those who were the overseers of the big project, as it was called. From the president of Harvard to the PayPal Mafia, National Venture Capital Association, InQtel, DARPA, NASA, CIA, DIA, to the worst patent thieves in America, James Chandler, Hillary Clinton, David Kappos, Robert Mueller, and the rest of the big tech group. Mark is just like the other fake front men.
So look at the people that are actually involved in here, right? James Chandler, Hillary Clinton, David Kappos, Robert Mueller, right? So we're looking back at Mueller being part of the this is obviously coming from, as I said, the DARPA crowd, NSA, CIA, DIA. So, and of course now they also mentioned the PayPal Mafia, which is interesting also. All right, let us continue.
And chosen to represent the numerous other social media companies. Eric Schmidt was the poster child for the Silicon Valley geniuses who ran corporations that are basically exempt from prosecution as the facade for military weaponized companies that are always funded by the same evil bankers. Fidelity Investment, Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, BlackRock, JP Morgan, HSBC, Excel Partners, Kleiner Perkins, and the rest of the Silicon Valley venture capitalists who are always making a killing from companies who get no bent government contracts.
I also want to point out that when they start talking about Fidelity Investment, Vanguard, this is actually where your birth certificate entities end up getting traded. Not that the others don't participate, but Fidelity has a very big part in this, in this as trading these assets as an insurance company.
These companies like Facebook are just an excuse for black ops experiments to control the enemy, and Mark doesn't know who the enemy is. Mark's lack of moral compass made him the perfect patsy for the new military experiments on U.S. citizens. I believe now, since Mark was well aware of the evil intentions of the government, that he has committed crimes of many types with a clear, premeditated intention of harming every Facebook user. That is why Mark let Facebook be used to manipulate elections. He has no moral code. I personally saw the template that Hillary ordered that uses Facebook to manipulate voters to win elections for her. Given the amount of election interference by big tech in 2016, I became a reluctant believer in miracles. I have seen the truth concerning the supposed Russian interference and can tell you that it was all made up, and in fact was the exact opposite of what the media reported. I have seen so many illegal actions of Facebook that I am indeed complicit with the crimes. That is one of the reasons I must remain anonymous. But I assure you, if I testified, Mark and I would be locked up along with the other members of the fellowship, as well as many, many other Facebook employees. It is due to the truth that it is currently coming out in the media that I feel I can reveal what I witnessed, so that Mark and the U.S. and British military-controlled Facebook can be charged with criminal activity instead of simply being hit with antitrust charges that only split Facebook into many subsidiaries, which would make simply Mark even more rich. Then the poor suckers believed in Facebook will be left holding the bag, an empty bag of a gutted Facebook worth nothing or a little or nothing. Mark will simply rebrand and go on with multiple companies that will be just as big as Facebook. He will escape unscathed, protected by his military handlers, who, by the way, were inside traders from the beginning of Facebook, and who will be allowed to buy into the new companies from the beginning also. Once again, the use of taxpayer dollars goes to private corporations run by stooges and controlled by non-Americans. Yes, I just called Mark a stooge because he actually has no clue what he's doing at all. Just ask him to write a simple program in any code he would like. Any. He can't. He's a fraud and always was. I will not tell you who the members of Mark Zuckerberg's fellowship group were. I can point out that all the original members of Facebook knew from the beginning that it was a military project for cyber warfare mind control. Everything done from the beginning was an experiment to see just how far a social media platform could go to conquer the enemy through behavioral manipulation with electronic warfare. The idea that Mark wanted to connect all college students in America was a novel idea that was far from the true intention of mind control of every user in the world. Free platforms like Google, Gmail, Facebook, and the rest were confidence tricks to get users to experiment on. My old buddy Sean Parker, an early member of Facebook, has confessed all to the media and specifically told the truth that Facebook was meant as a cyber drug to create and control addicts, digital addicts. As Sean said, we knew from the beginning it was harming every user, and that's why we never let our friends or our children use these systems. It harms them tremendously and was the original intent of the media. Mark and I were told by representatives of DARPA that that was the intent of Facebook from its inception. The U.S. Patriot Act allows the military to consider every American a possible terrorist or enemy warfighter until proven otherwise.
That part right there. Again, U.S. Patriot Act, consider us all, terrorists. In fact, we've been considered, enemy combatants from the beginning, from the time of when the U.S. bankruptcy went down, and we were formed into, transformed the country and the republic into the business entity. We were all headed down this road to where we were always enemies. And then that's why they can do anything to us in this military setup, because we are, we have a whole set of rules put down on top of us on how the military can treat these enemy combatants. So anyway, we'll let that go, and we'll get to that at another time.
Every person on the internet, which was also created by DARPA, is considered a cyber terrorist, and the military sees it as their job to create systems to surveil, target, disarm, and aggressively remote control the user. I hated the idea from the first time I heard of it. Personally, I have never used Facebook, and I don't let anyone I love use it. Mark would use patriot arguments, like the ones mentioned above, to justify his participation in this black ops CIA operation to the fellowship. We argued with him, but to no avail. Mark basically believed anything his controllers told him. We would sometimes convince him that the project was dead wrong, but all it took was one phone call from above, and Mark went back to his scheming. It was truly pathetic to see that Mark had no freedom, but was told what to do. He was also so poorly organized and such a muddled thinker, he couldn't get anything done. Homework, schoolwork, project work, nothing. So there was always cleanup to be done after Mark, especially when the company got big. Cleanup would include stupid stuff like paying others millions for stealing their code, making stupid statements every time he opened his mouth, or the lack of attention he gave to the running of his company. Mark was always a mess, and the fellowship, as well as Larry Summers' squeeze, Sheryl Sandberg, those soulless megalomaniacs deserve each other. Help the handlers control Mark. We're always picking up the broken pieces and trying to glue them back together. This time, Facebook and Mark cannot be fixed. Many of the original Facebook players and the fellowship have been paid off in huge bribes to keep us quiet. CIA secrecy agreements grow on every plant at Facebook, but the Facebook insiders are turning against Mark for many good reasons. The board of directors wants him fired. Mark's British controller sent Baron Richard Allen to rein Mark in, but he failed miserably. Even Sir Nick Clegg, ex-deputy prime minister of Britain, was sent to shut Mark up, but to no avail. Even the second in charge of Britain couldn't stop Mark and his non-stop stupidity. Mark opens his mouth, it costs the company billions. Mark testifies, and everyone finds out that he doesn't know a single thing about his company. Mark knows nothing because he doesn't do anything and hasn't really shown up for work since the beginning. He seems to be allergic to work and can't stand meetings unless he's announcing something. He is the worst manager in history, and everyone will tell you the same if asked. We all play like Mark runs a company, but that's not true. Mark can't run himself effectively, let alone Facebook. That is why he was failing at Harvard and was going to be kicked out for bad grades, even after I did much of his work for him. I can honestly say that at this point, there are no insiders who have any faith in Mark to run the company or even speak in public. We believe that even after Larry Summers, the father of Facebook, who planted Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook to shut Mark up and stop revealing that Facebook is the tool of the Democrat agenda for globalism, cannot fix the company. This is one of the points I'm most angry about. Mark has become, over the years, no friend of America. In fact, he hates America and rants on how proud he is to avoid U.S. taxes and to cheat the American people, whom he considers to be animals. Mark believes he is a higher being, above human beings. He now believes it was all his work that made Facebook. He's completely deluded by his own propaganda, which is nothing but lies. It is because Mark is now a danger to himself and the world that I must tell the true story of how Facebook and social media have become enemies of America and the world. The ostensible goal was to create a social directory in Harvard where people could share in small groups. The real intent was to create a social network to manipulate the world. Mark liked the idea, but was too lazy to do anything about it. He stuck his nose into the others' camps to see what they were doing, but he himself just talked about it with good programmers and made them promises. Thus, numerous lawsuits ensued from those promises. Larry Summers continued to call Mark into his office for updates, so Mark just lied. Occasionally, others would be in the office with Larry Summers, but one person stood out and showed up at many more meetings in the future. This man was obviously the person in charge of the project. His name was a former Harvard law professor, James Chandler. He boasted that he was one of the top idea people for DARPA and that he had actually developed lower-level programming languages for the Army. He pretended to be interested in me, but I could tell that it was a political act. Guys like me can just sense these things. Over time, it came out that Summers and Chandler had much bigger plans for social media project and had some outside sources of help to complete the project. Mark found it odd that Summers, Chandler, and eventually Sheryl Sandberg did not put much pressure on Mark to produce, but were interested in everything Mark was learning, from spying on the other groups for almost 2 years. One day, Mark was called to Summers' office in Massachusetts Hall to meet a most unusual man. His name was Andrew Marshall, and he was the head of the Naval Intelligence Net Assessment Office. Mark was terrified of Marshall from the beginning. Marshall had Mark sign a government secrecy agreement and other security agreements before he told Mark the ultimate military nature of what the Harvard Facebook project entailed. Mark, and Harvard were simply being used as an incubation think tanks, as a cover for a military project that needed a corporate face. Professor Chandler said he had discovered the source code that would accomplish the seemingly impossible task of making social directory scalable to billions of people. Chandler droned on, as Harvard professors like to do, about how Harvard academic elites were the best choices to do early testing because of their superior intellects. He explained that this scalability dilemma was not being solved by the military's usual Microsoft, IBM, and Oracle go-to military intelligence suppliers for reasons that were above my head.
I just wanted to stop about Chandler. I believe he's the one that actually stole the this IP from Michael McKibben and Leader Technologies. And this is and they already have the evidence of that. I believe I picked that up on one of the other American intelligence media videos that they put out. Just a way to tie that in.
Yeah. He said that they had found a company who had solved the problem, but was not willing to be used by the military as Black Ops project against Americans and the rest of the world. Chandler and Summers had selected Mark as their frontman to lie and claim he had written the source code for scalability. Chandler explained that the government had seized the source code from an inventor and his company for use in the DARPA Harvard Facebook project. He explained in very flowery intellectual property theft language that Mark may get sued by the inventor, but that DARPA would shield him. Mark told him he was willing to take that chance. Mark knew full well that the people who had brainwashed him had a big plan and his part was simply to do as they told him to do. But now Mark was getting scared because James Chandler was a member of the president's national security team, a top national security and patent lawyer, and a truly mean, ugly, and frightening black man who could easily turn on you like a pit bull. Larry Summers had those same elitist bully traits, but was the president of Harvard and an economic world leader. Mark felt that he was being groomed and protected by some very powerful people. But it was Andrew Marshall, the one they called Yoda, who scared the pants off of Mark. After Mark had been read into the plan by Summers and Chandler, their boss wanted to meet Mark to make sure that he could be trusted to be a part of this overarching evil plan to manipulate all of cyberspace as if it were a war arena. Andrew Marshall did not like Mark at all. I witnessed it myself when I was asked to attend one of Andrew Marshall's Highland Forum groups as a major executive for Facebook, along with Mark. Every time Mark opened his mouth, Marshall would stare at him until Mark would shut up. Marshall indicated in this meeting that Mark himself was the biggest problem with the Facebook operation. Mark was so happy when Andrew Marshall died not long ago. Mark now takes orders from Marshall understudies Dick O'Neill and James Baker, who run Highlands Group. Chandler also worked for Highlands Group and directed numerous operations, working directly with Andrew Marshall and James Baker. The Facebook operation also coordinated their activities with Rose Law Firm in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the group that gathered around Hillary Clinton's patent thefts. Every Facebook insider who was there from the beginning knew these things to be true, but would never speak of it for fear of retaliation and possible death. We are speaking about a theft of literally many trillions of dollars of intellectual property, trade secrets, patents, designs, and stolen programming source code. Mark bragged for 2 years about being able to write the source code for Facebook platform, but he did not produce a single line of code. For 2 years, all the fellowship heard about were promises of a breakthrough at any moment. We heard one excuse right after the other. We learned later it was because the inventor had run into some R&D roadblocks that needed sorted out first. Mark continued to spy on the other groups working on the Harvard Facebook student and staff directories, made by many promises to everyone involved, but did not follow through. Mark kept promising he was going to just sit down and write the code as if it was no big deal. His meetings with Summers, Chandler, Marshall, and others continued, and Mark always came back encouraged. Then one day, Mark got terribly excited about hacking a fellow student at Harvard because he had some part of the Facebook program. The particular student was an upperclassman named Max McKibben, who lived next door in Winthrop House, literally 100 feet from our Kirkland house front door. Mark got the best hacker to come to our room and use a special school computer to hack into McKibben's personal Harvard email account to steal several white papers on an invention just like the one Chandler had described. This white paper described exactly what Mark had been talking about for 2 years, and now a Harvard student had a full description of a program that could do the same thing. It was on October 28, 2003 that Mark returned from Summers' office and announced, "Let the hacking begin." That hacking stole the white paper that had been sent to the son of Michael McKibben, the owner of Leader Technologies and the real inventor of scalable social media. Michael had sent his son Max the white papers written to describe the new invention. When Mark learned that Chandler was Michael's patent attorney, the theft finally put a name to the target Chandler had talked about in vague terms. Chandler had requested that Michael write up a detailed explanation of the system and how it worked. Once Mark showed the stolen white papers to Chandler, Chandler confessed he already had a complete evaluation copy of the source code as Michael's patent attorney, that he was using a spy tactic called strategic deception and pretending to help Michael and Leader Technologies file patents while he was secretly providing Michael's invention code to DARPA's IBM Eclipse Foundation cyber warfare partners. And a note to people, this isn't in the text, if you go to the site, we do have a copy of Mark Zuckerberg's emails back and forth talking about the hacking begins, but that is posted on our site if you want to grab it. Those are in PDF form. So let me continue reading the letter from this insider. Chandler had requested that Michael write up a detailed explanation to the system and how it worked. Once Mark showed the stolen white papers to Chandler, Chandler confessed that he was already given a complete evaluation copy. Chandler told Mark that IBM Eclipse was preparing Michael's program as they spoke to give to Mark for the Facebook launch at EclipseCon 04 in San Francisco right after the Harvard January reading period. He said the plan was to transfer all of the NSA's LifeLog data as soon as possible to the Facebook platform as well. He also told Mark that he would be moving to Silicon Valley after the term was over and that the next phase of the plan for him would happen in California. Dustin and I went with him that summer, but I decided to return to Boston and graduate. That was a sad separation. I was not happy he got rid of his Craigslist girls. The few that I actually saw looked like sad street urchins. Chandler had not seen Michael's white papers yet and was eager to have them. Mark sent him the hacked copies. Chandler said, with the inventor's first ever public write-up and the source code, the Highlands Group and the IBM Eclipse Foundation now had what they needed to prepare the platform for Mark to launch the Facebook, later shortened to Facebook, at EclipseCon 04 in February. I now realize that Chandler took the stolen source code from Michael McKibben and Leader Technologies and gave it to the IBM Eclipse Foundation, who turned around and gave it as open source, the most lucrative intellectual property in history, to all the social media giants as open source without charging a penny. What I'm telling you now is a composite understanding of what I knew early on in the fellowship group of Mark Zuckerberg and what I have learned up to this time as a core insider of Facebook to this very day. It is not only Mark who needs to pay for his crimes, but many others also. IBM Eclipse Foundation plays like they are moral, honest, and philanthropically give away intellectual property to other companies who essentially became monopolies with the stolen programming source code. This is laughable, and I told Mark when he was being told this information by his handlers that the plan would never work because anyone can see through such stupidity. But to this day, besides Facebook insiders and the Facebook group, no one has ever told me that they suspect the IBM Eclipse Foundation or the Highlands Forum are corrupt. You see, the bigger the lie, the easier it is to get people to believe it. Mark Zuckerberg, did not create Facebook. Facebook is a governmental monopoly doing the most advanced virtual behavior modification on the planet with stolen and modified patents, intellectual property, and trade secrets from inventors who were not remunerated for their inventions. I personally knew this, even when it was happening. I felt sick the whole time, and this led to many, many arguments between me and Mark. The other members of the fellowship felt the same way I did. Eventually, Mark had to buy all of us off with large sums of money over the years. We have not spoken up before now, but I personally cannot hold my silence any longer. I must speak out openly about the criminal surveillance Mark does through Facebook because it gets worse every day. Mark's handlers tell him to allow more surveillance, even though security breaches, selling customer data, allowing for spying by the CIA, NSA, DIA, GCHQ, MI6, Five Eyes, lying to Congress, meddling in elections, allowing everyone access to Facebook data, censoring conservatives, being a platform for the Democrat Party, and many other charges have been brought against Facebook and other countries in America. Mark will not listen to me or anyone else about stopping the insanity. I believe he's unstable and not fit to run Facebook. When I saw the $1.5 billion from George Soros and the Atlantic Council bringing in the AI system, some built by the Cambridge Digital Forensic Research Laboratory, used in Europe to stop free speech, I had had enough. It was then that I knew Mark was truly being used by evil forces and that even he couldn't stop it. He seemed to have a death wish to destroy Facebook and reveal some of its evil intent. This was ruining the company I'm trying to help run. There was no other avenues that I could take the company down that would deter Mark from the total destruction of Facebook. Mark had been told to win the country for Hillary or kill the company trying. He was making astounding mistakes that showed the true evil foundations of Facebook. Our secrets were gushing out like blood from a slaughtered pig. I kept talking to Mark, trying to change his mind, but he became more insane and impossible to talk to. Mark gave up control of the company to a crowd stumbling over themselves to take personal credit for Facebook's turnaround, including Highlands Group, DHS, DOD, Naval Intelligence, Serco, Crown Agents, IBM Eclipse Foundation, Clinton Foundation, Open Society Foundation, Google, Alphabet, Schmidt, Sandberg, Field, Hoffman, Breyer, Louis, Ketterson, Goldman Sachs, Blankfein, Diamond, Microsoft, Gates, Allen, Thomas, Ballmer, Ozzie, Nadella, Milner, Obama, Pritzker, Hillary, Kuchar, Bono, Soros, Lamont, the Queen's Men, Richard Allen, and Nick Clegg, and the rest of the gang who were eager to clean up Mark's messes. I could see that Facebook was on its last leg, but I couldn't understand why Mark would kill the company. Then one day I realized what Mark was doing with the obvious crash landing of Facebook. He was being told that he would get a deal with the government charges against the company and would not have to pay billions in fines. The deal would be like the government's deal with Standard Oil when they were charged with antitrust monopoly issues. They were made to break up into 7 different companies, all of which became as big or bigger than Standard Oil itself. Splitting up the monopoly made the owner 7 times richer. That's what Mark is doing. He wants Facebook to be broken up instead of answer to the crimes that it's willingly committed. Corporations can simply go bankrupt, dissolve, crash and burn, or do what Google did when it created a new company called Alphabet, which is now called the mother of Google and is worth even more. How a child becomes a parent is a new one for me. Eric Schmidt showed Mark exactly what to do, and please remember that Eric Schmidt was also Mark's mentor and the first person to invest millions in Facebook before it went public. Eric Schmidt made billions off of his insider trading knowledge from the Highlands Forum investment in Facebook. Britain's offshore banks feed them with endless money laundering and deal flow as long as the Queen gets her cut. All of us insiders know this global money game is totally rigged to perpetuate this evil power. I don't want to go to my grave knowing that I didn't do something to atone for my sins in perpetuating these lies. I believe that Mark is doing everything in his power to get President Donald Trump deposed, just as he did everything he could to get Hillary elected. If Trump continues, the globalists lose. Mark is a true globalist. He is not an American anymore. Mark essentially does not have a plan for Facebook. He simply does what he's told and always has. Mark has made no decisions on his own, not one. This current decision to destroy Facebook from the inside out is nothing more than Mark's handlers using Mark in their last hours of power. Trump will win 2020 and Facebook will die. The only question left is whether Trump will charge Mark Fagerberg with the crimes he committed. I, for one, want Mark in jail along with his handlers. I have personally been threatened and intimidated by these big tech monsters since I met Mark Greenberg, a person who truly does not know his own name and who he is, and yet is one of the richest people on earth. Mark did not earn nor deserve a single penny he has been given. Mark is a cardboard cutout who has lost his way and is completely delusional at this point. As a Facebook insider, I demand Mark be fired and all assets taken from him due to his nonstop lying to stockholders and Facebook users. The board of directors, underwriters, and institutional investors all know the secret government contracts have been propping up the company since the beginning, but most average shareholders do not. It is a government-owned and operated military psyops weapon that has gotten out of control and been used for treasonous purposes and for seditious actions against the American people. After she got sick of the lies, Mark's former speechwriter, Catherine Lutz, described in her 2004 book, The Boy Kings, that Facebook has stolen personal data and sold it, created a dark profile on every user and sold it to everyone who would pay the price, created secret files of compromising photos, allowed all government agencies to access all user data, breached every user agreement, lied continuously to all users, built in backdoors and zero-day programs for the military and many other unethical, immoral, and illegal activities. Did Mark Greenberg willingly and with intent allow these criminal activities to go unchecked on Facebook? You bet he did. And he's still doing it. And it's getting worse every day. Like other Facebook insiders, I want no part of this squelching of free speech or illegal surveillance activities or the purposeful experimentation on users to develop new and better means to electronically control, manipulate, and imprison people. I have stood against Mark's immoral and evil actions since our freshman year at Harvard. Nothing has changed except that Mark has gotten worse and his handlers have become so demanding that they are condemning Facebook to a trash heap and creating the circumstances for Mark to become even richer and more insane. His next projects include a system much like what Eric Schmidt has created for China, a social credit system that controls the freedom of every American. When Facebook is broken up, the new companies will have the Eric Schmidt Dragonfly social credit system built in. When Facebook is broken up, the new companies will have the Eric Schmidt Dragonfly social credit system built in. Mark wants to be like Eric and control the world from a digital ivory tower and oversee the depopulation of the earth. These maniacs believe they are above the human race and are actually higher beings sent to earth to control the masses. From my experience, these attitudes are extremely prevalent with Silicon Valley tech giants, and they make me sick. The time has come to simply end the fake social media experiments and call them government black ops projects. I personally know most of the cyber tech lords and can testify that they do not possess the tech skills they claim they found in their companies. They are simply tech thieves, like Mark Zuckerberg, who needs to pay back those they stole from and be put in jail for their crimes. I personally am willing to testify without immunity and suffer whatever the consequences I deserve for knowing these things and never bringing them forward until now. I know that the corruption is so great in Washington, D.C., that I would not stand a chance of bringing forth this information without being squelched, killed, or silenced, like I have seen done to others. I suggest that the new Attorney General simply read this letter, investigate, and then ask Mark Greensburg to program a single line of coherent code. When he cannot, lock him up.
There we go. Oh, I say number one, don't let Facebook and Yahoo and Yahoo is different, but Facebook and Google and YouTube not get broken up. Let them remain, but turn it over to Leader Technologies. Let them refashion it. Let them basically, do something that would actually be beneficial, since they are the inventors. And then give also the aspect of the security certificates, work out something along those lines, so that it's not under the hands of we say the Karzarian mafia. Whoever you want to say is the head of it doesn't matter. The cabal, the deep state. This is the front line that we must cross. We need to move forward and remove these people from controlling the world via these operations. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and send over the link into the Telegram group. If you'd like to join in and have a discussion about this, you're welcome to do that. I will also go over our chat room and see if there's any questions. If you have questions, please go ahead and post them there. Oh, I sent that to Tui. Well, Tui has the link now too. So that's also good. If Tui wants to join in right now, let's switch over. Okay, we've got 68 people watching, 22 likes. Thank you for the likes. I'll share the screen. Okay. Hello, everybody. I said a lot of hellos in the beginning, so hello to everyone that I missed. People kept streaming in saying hello, but I had to go and start moving things forward here on the broadcast. Again, any questions? Put the queue. I'm going to try and scroll through, get to the questions. Dan, question. Why do they make fun of Mark as if he was brainwashed? Yeah, well, it's what else are you going to do when these people are out there in front? Even though they're all brainwashed, the whole cabal is brainwashed. The deep state individuals, they go through this process their entire life, but they are still responsible for everything that they do. They've been brainwashed. But you ever hear of breaking your brainwashing? You ever say about recognizing for yourself what's going on and deciding that you need to stop, really just take a hold of responsibility for what you are doing to others? Everyone has to be held accountable. Part of that is also suffering the ridicule that other people will throw at you for being brainwashed individual in the deep state. No one's going to like you for what you've done, but they can like you for what you stand up for and change your position. As the message that came from Tank the other day and Kim was, if you're out there, and they were targeting, they were directing this message to the assassins out there that have been killing off people. In the last week, when we had a dozen people knocked off. They are responsible for this, but they can stop it. They're not getting paid. Why are they continuing to do this? Or if they're getting paid in Zim and dinar, obviously, that's happened. The GCR has paid out, right? So everyone gets excited. So does that get them to go out and perform their jobs? But if you stop and you basically now switch sides and participate on the human side, on the humane side, on the side of Earth, of a new society of abundance, where people are actually going to look forward to, making the world a better place, you can make a difference by stopping. So please do. I'll continue. Mm-hmm. This Mark letter is amazing. Sounds like a very company boss I've worked for. Really, I would find someone organized. What a world. Well, this is a. Keep in mind that everything we're in these larger corporations, they have interlocking board members that basically have it into a massive corporation, one corporation around the world. It's just the sub corporations of the sub corporation dilutes that visible appearance that they are in control. So when we deal with the people that go up the chain, these are the ones that become more inhumane. And thus we have corporations that don't care about anything other than profit. Okay. That TQ is always throwing me off. I know it means thank you. You're going to see it. I think it's a question. Well, I guess we got to the bottom. So we've covered the questions for the day. Again, I appreciate everyone for joining. Please always subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check and see if you're not subscribed. You may have subscribed and been unsubscribed. And just keep moving these links out to people so that they know what's going on. Especially this one is very important, I think, to get this information out. Please frequent American Intelligence Media. Thank them for what they've been doing. They provide amazing information. So until another 45 minutes from now, we'll go Dank live. Also, that will be a very short one. I do have another appointment I'm going to have to get on for. Again, another front line, moving things forward, bringing abundance to the world. So we'll see if we can. Hopefully, a Tank can get on time, and we have time to see what the update. The update for yesterday was the word "not." All right. Until then, I look forward to the next front lines. See you tomorrow.